RX 272.7 V6, 1RF 188 horsepower. The third generation Lexus RX was produced with 3 power plants. The younger version is called RX 270. Under the hood is a V6 with 188 horsepower. This is a very reliable engine, although it is made in the spirit of the times, based on a light alloy cylinder block with phase shifters. But he has no congenital problems. Everything is small and quite rare: oil leaks, pump, etc. In most cases, the timing chain lasts 250,000 kilometers. A real half-millionaire if you change the oil every 10,000 kilometers. RX 353.5 V6, 2GRF 275 horsepower. The engine of the more common version of the RX 350 is also difficult to blame for its unconvincing resource. The super common 2GRF also easily lasts 500,000 kilometers if you don't spare money on oil service. There are plenty of cases of overhauls of these engines, but this happens due to overheating caused primarily by dirty radiators, the problem with wear of the intake valves and the loss of their seats in the first cylinder of these engines on the RX 350 occurs because these crossovers have a normal air filter box with a good quality paper liner. 17,801 to 31,131. The phase shifters of these motors also often rattle, but this does not affect the operation of the phase change system. You also need to make sure that oil is supplied to the rear cylinder head phase shifters through all metal tubes, 15,767 to 31,020, and not through unreliable ones with rubber inserts. You also need to monitor oil leaks through gaskets and seals, and do not overlook the lower oil supply pipes. RX 450h, 2GR-FXE plus 2 electric motors, 313 horsepower. While German designers were still thinking about hybrid crossovers, Lexus launched the second generation of its hybrid. The RX 450h version is equipped with a power plant based on a derated 2GR-FXE engine, which operates on the Atkinson cycle. A continuously variable transmission, not a CVT, based on 2 planetary gearboxes, is attached to it. Most cars have another electric motor located on the rear axle. Although some US versions of the RX 450h were front-wheel drive, the RX hybrid is reliable. It is necessary to ensure that the pump in the inverter cooling circuit is working. It needs to be changed preventively every 150,000 kilometers. 6-street automatic transmission Aisin U660F/U760E. Non-hybrid Lexus RX 3rd generation is equipped with a 6-speed manual transmission. Automatic Aisin U660F for all-wheel drive and U760E for the version with a 2.7-liter engine. These are literally identical transmissions. They are very reliable if you partially change the oil in them every 20,000 kilometers, or at least 40,000 kilometers. For a partial replacement you need about 4 liters of ATF. The filter with pan cleaning can be changed every 60,000 kilometers. This will protect the valve body from torque converter wear products. Otherwise, without replacing the ATF and filter, problems in this transmission may begin after a mileage of 150,000 kilometers. Over long runs, vibrations may appear, which take a lot of time and effort to find. We advise you to pay attention to the engine mounts, especially the rear ones, 12,380 to 31,060. Due to wear of its dampers, vibrations appear. Other lower engine mounts may become a source of knocking noises due to fatigue. The steering rack of this generation Lexus RX is electric. The electric motor, as you already understood, is not located on it, but on the steering shaft. By and large, the rack does not create problems and is easily repaired by replacing the bushings. More often than not, to overcome the knocking noise in the rack, you need to tighten the clamping nut on it. It happens that the spring under the nut weakens, so tightening it does not help. In this case, you can place a washer under the spring. The all-wheel drive transmission of the RX 350 version has not yet been noted as anything bad. The angular gearbox, transfer case, and rear gearbox will last a very long time if the transmission oil in them is updated every 50,000 kilometers. The third generation Lexus RX is often found with air suspension. Pneumatic struts last up to 200,000 kilometers, then they lose their tightness. Along with this, wear of the support bearings may also appear, but they are a component of the air struts and are not sold separately. There are no substitutes. In general, if the issue arises with air struts, then you will either have to buy new ones, $48,020 to $48,075, for $1,000 a piece, or look for specialists who can repair such struts. Often, owners abandon air struts and change the suspension to a conventional spring one. In this case, the front end requires both springs and struts complete with support bearings. For the rear axle, only springs are needed because the shock absorbers are installed separately there. The suspension of these crossovers is resilient and durable. Even the stabilizer struts, 48,820 to 28,050, and its bushings, 48,815 to 48,070, last 50,000 kilometers, if we are talking about the original. The cost is $50 and $10 respectively, and substitutes are 5 times cheaper. At the front, like its predecessor, there are McPherson struts. The levers are steel, ball removable, unscrew 3 nuts each, and you can remove them. Original ball joints, 43,340 to 49,035, $60 each. Original levers, 48,069 to 48,040, up to $200. You can repress the silent blocks, but instead of the original you will have to choose from a huge selection of substitutes. The average price is about $15 per piece. The rear suspension, compared to the previous generation car, does not look so fancy and lasts a long time. The first replacement of silent blocks is required after a mileage of about 150,000 kilometers. True, you will have to buy non-original silent blocks, because the original comes only with the levers. Hefty front trailing arm bushings from replacements cost up to $50. A pair of its floating silent blocks at the points of attachment to the trunnion, from $16 to $50 a piece. The prices for other silent blocks are approximately the same. Transverse levers can be purchased aftermarket. There are offers for any budget. Lexus versions with active anti-roll bars are very rare. They are combined with a spring suspension. From a reliability point of view, these are little studied parts, but it seems that they last a very long time. The oldest Lexus RX of the 3rd generation is 15 years old today, but you often can't tell by the body. In the sense that a car can be shabby and dented, but not rusty. For now, you don't have to worry about corrosion, but it's worth thinking about anti-corrosion protection of the wheel arches and bottom. You can also treat the internal cavities of the body with a consistent anti-corrosion agent. It has been noticed that the bumpers have become fragile. They crack at the slightest collision, especially in cold weather. But the body of the 3rd generation RX is not leaky. Like its predecessor, you don't have to worry about water getting inside the body. The main light for pre-restyling Lexus RX 3 is xenon. Xenon as a light source eventually spoils the coating on the reflectors behind the lenses. In this case, first of all, the cutoff line is blurred, and then the headlight light becomes increasingly dimmer. Such wear on the reflectors appears after 12 to 15 years of operation of these machines. There are many ways to restore headlights, from replacing reflectors, restoring their coating, to installing new lenses and headlights. By the time a vehicle reaches 200,000 kilometers, door hinges may become tired. This primarily concerns the driver's door hinge. Due to wear on the bushings, the hinges begin to creak, and the door also sags. The loops here are completely ordinary, 68,740 to 12,120, 68,720 to 12,151, i.e. used on dozens of Toyota and Lexus models. New ones cost $25 and are easy to replace. There may be problems with the rear door servo motor. If the servo drive does not lift the trunk door, but after manual opening the mechanism is able to close it normally, then check the sensors in the sides of the opening behind the trim. The contacts in them are simply oxidized. If the servo does not show any signs of life at all, soldering or replacing the control unit may help. Otherwise, the Lexus RX 3 electronics are reliable and have no systematic problems. Failures rarely occur due to flooded pumps, 8,533,060,190, of the windshield or rear window. Moisture can kill one of the parking sensors. Let us add that the mileage on Lexuses is very easy to adjust, because stored only in the dashboard. If the dashboard can lie about the mileage, then the condition of the interior can reveal the truth. Lexus RX fans note that the finishing materials in the 3rd generation have become less durable. Leather upholstery quickly shows signs of wear, rubbing and creases. Door handles and the automatic transmission selector knob are quickly polished from the touch of the palm. Of course, all this is quite subjective. But in general, traces of use appear early in this cosmic-looking interior. Plus, the RX-3's interior is quite creaky. Not only does the dashboard and door cards creak, but even the rear seat supports and even the rear door hinge. All this manifests itself very differently on different cars. Almost all 3rd generation RXs have developed a knocking, crunching or clattering noise that can be heard when driving over rough road surfaces. Sometimes, along with this, a slight tremor is felt on the steering wheel. All these symptoms arose very early, literally from 20,000 kilometers, and can still appear if the previous owners of these crossovers did not eliminate the source of the noise. The knocking noise occurs on the electric power steering motor shaft. This unit, 45,250 to 48,181, is located on the steering column, literally above the driver's knees. You need to remove the plastic under the steering column, where the electric motor and its shaft are attached to the steering shaft perpendicular to it. There is a cap at the free end of the shaft housing. If you pick it up and remove it, you will find the source of the knocking. Roughly speaking, the creaking occurs on the antennae of the shaft fixing bracket. This creaking can be eliminated very simply. Insert several turns of the spring. The spring coils from the repair kit for Zhiguli brake calipers are ideal. At high mileage, knocking in play in the steering cardan may appear. Its crosspieces can be replaced with non-original ones,